Section 10 of The Girl from the Marsh Croft by Selma Lagerlöf. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Reading by Lars Rolander. Section 10. The Airship, Part 2. Father and the boys are sitting one morning at the opera. One of Father's old comrades, who is with the Royal Orchestra, has invited him to be present at a symphony rehearsal, and Father has taken the boys along. When the orchestra strikes up and the auditorium is filled with tone, Father is so affected that he cannot control himself and begins to weep. He sobs and blows his nose and moans aloud time and again. He puts no restraint upon his feelings, but makes such a noise that the musicians are disturbed. A guard comes along and beckons him away, and Father takes the boys by the hand and slinks out without a word of protest. All the way home his tears continue to flow. Father is walking on with a boy on each side, and he has kept their hands in his all the while. Suddenly the boys start crying. They understand now for the first time how much Father has loved his art. It was painful for him to sit there, besotten and broken, and listen to others playing. They feel sorry for him who had never become what he might have been. It was with Father as it might be with Lennart, were he never to finish his flying machine, or with Hugo if he were not to make any voyages of discovery. Think if they should one day sit like old good-for-nothings and see fine airships sailing over their heads which they had not invented and were not allowed to pilot. The boys were sitting one morning on opposite sides of the writing table. Father had taken a music roll under his arm and gone out. He had mumbled something about giving a music lesson, but the boys had not for a moment been tempted into believing this true. Father is in an ugly mood as he walks up the street. He noticed the look the boys exchanged when he said he was going to a music lesson. "They are setting themselves up as judges of their father," he thinks. "I'm too indulgent toward them. I should have given them each a sound box on the ear. It's their mother, I dare say, who is setting them against me. Suppose I were to keep an eye on the fine gentlemen," he continues. "It would do no harm to find out how they attend to their lessons." He turns back, walks quietly across the court, opens the door very softly, and stands in the boys' room without either of them having heard him coming. The boys jump up red in the face, and Lennart quickly snatches a bundle of papers which he throws into the table drawer. When the boys had been in Stockholm a day or two, they had asked which school they were to attend, and the father had replied that their school-going days were over now. He would try and procure a private tutor who would teach them. This proposition he had never carried into effect, nor had the boys said anything more about going to school. But in less than a week a school chart was discovered hanging on the wall in the boys' room. The school books had been brought forth, and every morning they sat on opposite sides of an old writing table and studied their lessons aloud. It was evident that they had received letters from their mother counseling them to try and study, so as not to forget entirely what they had learned. Now, as Father unexpectedly comes into the room, he goes up to the chart first and studies it. He takes out his watch and compares. "Wednesday between 10 and 11, geography." Then he comes up to the table. "Shouldn't you have geography at this hour?" "Yes," the boys reply, growing flame red in the face. "Have you the geography and the map?" The boys glance over the bookshelf and look confused. "We haven't begun yet," says Lennart. "Indeed," says Father. "You must have been up to something else." He straightens up, thoroughly pleased with himself. He has an advantage, which he doesn't care to let go until he has browbeaten them very effectually. Both boys are silent. Ever since the day they accompanied Father to the opera, they have felt sympathy for him, and it has not been such an effort for them to be kind to him as it was before. but naturally they haven't for a moment thought of taking father into their confidence. He has not risen in their estimation, although they are sorry for him. "Were you writing letters?" father asks in his severest tone. "No," says the boys at the same time. "What were you doing?" "Oh, just talking." "That isn't true. I saw that Lennart hid something in the drawer of the table." Now both boys are mum again. "Take it out!" shouts the father, purple with rage. He thinks the sons have written to his wife, and since they don't care to show the letter, of course there is something mean about him in it. The boys do not stir, and father raises his hand to strike Lennart, who is sitting before the table drawer. "Don't touch him!" cries Hugo. "We were only talking over something which Lennart has invented." Hugo pushes Lennart aside, opens the drawer, and pulls out the paper, which is scrawled full of airships of the most extraordinary shapes. "Last night Lennart thought out a new kind of sail for his airship. It was of this we were speaking." Father wouldn't believe him. He bends over, searches in the drawer, but finds only sheets of paper covered with drawings of balloons, parachutes, flying machines, and everything else appertaining to air sailing. To the great surprise of the boys, father does not cast this aside at once, nor does he laugh at their attempts, but examines closely sheet after sheet. As a matter of fact, father, too, has a little leaning towards mechanics, and was interested in things of this sort in days gone by, when his brain was still good for something. Soon he begins to ask questions as to the meaning of one thing and another, and inasmuch as his words betray that he is deeply interested and understands what he sees, Lennart fights his bashfulness and answers him hesitatingly at first, and then more willingly. Soon father and boys are absorbed in a profound discussion about airships and air sailing. After they are fairly well started, the boys chatter unreservedly and give father a share in their plans and dreams of greatness. And while the father comprehends, of course, that the boys cannot fly very far with the airship which they have constructed, he is very much impressed. His little sons talk of aluminum motors, aeroplanes, and balancers as though they were the simplest things in the world. He had thought them regular blockheads because they didn't get on very fast at school. Now, all at once, he believes they are a pair of little scientists. The high soaring thoughts and aspirations father understands better than anything else. He cognizes them. He himself has dreamed in the same way, and he has no desire to laugh at such dreams. Father doesn't go out again that morning, but sits and chats with the boys until it is time to fetch the food for dinner and set the table. And at that meal father and the boys are real good friends, to their great and mutual astonishment. The hour is 11 at night, and father is staggering up the street. The little boys are walking on either side of him, and he holds their hands tightly clasped in his all the while. They have sought him out in one of his haunts, where they have stationed themselves just inside the door. Father sits by himself at a table with a big brown toddy in front of him, and listens to a ladies' orchestra which is playing at the other end of the hall. After a moment's hesitancy, he rises reluctantly and goes over to the boys. "What is it?" he asks. "Why do you come here?" "Father was to come home," they say. "This is the 5th of December. Father promised." Then he remembers that Lennart had confided to him that it was Hugo's birthday, and that he had promised him to come home early. But this he had entirely forgotten. Hugo was probably expecting a birthday present from him, but he had not remembered to get him one. At any rate, he has gone with the boys, and is walking along, displeased with them and with himself. When he comes home, the birthday table is laid. The boys had wished to give a little party. Lennart had creamed some pancakes, which are now a few hours old and look like pieces of leather. They had received a little money from their mother, and with this they had bought nuts and raisins and a bottle of soda water. The fine feast they did not care to enjoy all by themselves, and they had been sitting and waiting for father to come home and share it with them. Now, since they and father have become friends, they cannot celebrate such a big event without him. Father understands it all, and the thought of being missed flatters him and puts him in a fairly good humor. Half full as he is, he plumps himself down at the table. Just as he is about to take his place, he stumbles, clutches at the tablecloth, falls, and draws down on the floor everything on the table. As he raises himself, he sees how the soda flows out over the floor, and pickles and pancakes are strewn about among bits of porcelain and broken glass. Father glances at the boys' long faces, rips out an oath, and makes a rush for the door, and he doesn't come back home until towards morning. One morning in February, the boys are coming up the street with their skates dangling from their shoulders. They are not quite like themselves. They have grown thin and pale and look untidy and uncared for. Their hair is uncut, they are not well washed, and they have holes in both stockings and shoes. When they address each other, they use a lot of street boy expressions, and one and another oath escapes from their lips. A change has taken place in the boys. It had its beginning on the evening when their father forgot to come home to help celebrate Hugo's birthday. It was as if until that time they had been kept up by the hope that soon their father would be a changed man. At first they had counted on his tiring of them and sending them home. Later they had fancied that he would become fond of them and give up drinking for their sakes, and they had even imagined that mother and he might become reconciled and that all of them would be happy. But it dawned upon them that night that father was impossible. He could love nothing but drink. Even if he were kind to them for a little while, he didn't really care for them. A heavy hopelessness fell upon the boys. Nothing would ever be changed for them. They should never get away from father. They felt as though they were doomed to sit shut in a dark prison all their lives. Not even their great plans for the future could comfort them. In the way that they were bound down, these plans could never be carried out. Only think, they were not learning anything. They knew enough of the histories of great men to know that he who wants to accomplish anything noteworthy must first of all have knowledge. Still, the hardest blow was that mother did not come to them at Christmas. In the beginning of December she had fallen downstairs and broken her leg, and was forced to lie in a hospital during the Christmas holidays. Therefore she could not come to Stockholm. Now that mother was up, her school had begun again. Apart from this, she had no money with which to travel. The little that she had saved was spent while she lay ill. The boys felt themselves deserted by the whole world. It was obvious that it never would be any better for them, no matter how good they were. So gradually they ceased to exert themselves with the sort of things that were tiresome. They might just as well do that which amused them. The boys began to shirk their morning studies. No one heard their lessons, so what was the use of their studying? There had been good skating for a couple of days, and they might as well play truant all day. On the ice there were always throngs of boys, and they had made the acquaintance of a number who also preferred skating to being shut up in the house with their books. It has turned out to be such a fine day that it is impossible to think of staying indoors. The weather is so clear and sunny that the school children have been granted skating leave. The whole street is filled with children who have been home to get their skates and are now hurrying down to the ice. The boys, as they move among the other children, appear solemn and low-spirited. Not a smile lights up their faces. Their misfortune is so heavy that they cannot forget it for a second. When they come down on the ice, it is full of life and movement. All along the edges it is bordered with a tight mass of people. Farther out, the skaters circle around one another like gnats, and still farther out, solitary black specks that float along at lightning speed are seen. The boys buckle on their skates and join the other skaters. They skate very well, and as they glide out on the ice full speed, they get color in their cheeks and their eyes sparkle. But not for a moment do they appear happy like other children. All of a sudden, as they are making a turn toward land, they catch sight of something very pretty. A big balloon comes from the direction of Stockholm and is sailing out toward Salt Lake. It is striped in reds and yellow, and when the sun strikes it, it glitters like a ball of fire. The basket is decorated with many hued flags, and as the balloon does not fly very high, the bright color play can be seen quite plainly. When the boys spy the balloon, they send up a shriek of delight. It is the first time in their lives that they have seen a big balloon sailing through the air. All the dreams and plans which have been their consolation and joy during the many trying days come back to them when they see it. They stand still that they may observe how the ropes and lines are fastened, and they take note of the anchor and the sandbags on the edge of the car. The balloon moves with good speed over the ice-bound fjord. All the skaters, big and little, dart around one another, laughing and hooting at it when it first comes into sight, and then they bound after it. They follow it out to sea in a long, swaying line, like a drag line. The air sailors amuse themselves by scattering handfuls of paper strips in a variety of colors, which come circling down slowly through the blue air. The boys are foremost in the long line that is chasing after the balloon. They hurry forward with heads thrown back and gaze steadily turned upward. Their eyes dance with delight for the first time since they parted from their mother. They are beside themselves with excitement over the airship and think of nothing else than to follow it as long as possible. But the balloon moves ahead rapidly, and one has to be a good skater not to be left behind. The crowd chasing after it thins down, but in the lead of those who keep up the pursuit the two little boys are seen. Afterwards people said there was something strange about them. They neither laughed nor shouted, but on their upturned faces there was a look of transport, as though they had seen a heavenly vision. The balloon also affects the boys like a celestial guide, who has come to lead them back to the right path and teach them how to go forward with renewed courage. When the boys see it, their hearts bound with longing to begin work again on the great invention. Once more they feel confident and happy. If only they are patient, they'll probably work their way toward success. A day will surely come when they can step into their own airship and soar aloft in space. Some day they will be the ones who travel up there, far above the people, and their airship will be more perfect than the one they now see. There shall be an airship that can be steered and turned, lowered and raised, sail against wind and without wind. It shall carry them by day and by night, wherever they may wish to travel. They shall descend to the highest mountain peaks, travel over the dreariest deserts, and explore the most inaccessible regions. They shall behold all the glories of the world. "It isn't worth while to lose heart, Hugo," says Lennart. "We'll have a fine time if we can only finish it." Father and his ill luck are things which do not concern them any more. One who has something as great to strive for as they have cannot let himself be hindered by anything so pitiable. The balloon gains in speed the farther out it comes. The skaters have ceased following it. The only ones who continue the chase are the two little boys. They move ahead as swiftly and lightly as if their feet had taken on wings. Suddenly the people who stand on the shore and can look far out across the fjord send up a great cry of horror and fear. They see that the balloon, pursued all the while by the two children, sails away towards the fairway, where there is open sea. Open sea! It is open sea out there, the people shout. The skaters down on the ice hear the shouts and turn their eyes toward the mouth of the fjord. They see how a strip of water shimmers in the sunlight yonder. They see also that two little boys are skating toward this strip, which they do not notice because their eyes are fixed on the balloon, and not for a second do they turn them toward earth. The people are calling out with all their might and stamping on the ice. Fast runners are hurrying on to stop them, but the little ones mark nothing of all this where they are chasing after the airship. They do not know that they alone are following it. They hear no cries back of them. They do not hear the splash and roar of the water ahead of them. They see only the balloon, which, as it were, carries them with it. Lennart already feels his own airship rising under him, and Hugo soars away over the North Pole. The people on the ice and on the shore see how rapidly they are nearing the open sea. For a second or two they are in such breathless suspense as they can neither move nor cry out. It seems as if the two children are under a magic spell in their chase after a shining heavenly vision. The air sailors up in the balloon have also caught a glimpse of the little boys. They see that they are in danger and scream at them and make warning gestures, but the boys do not understand them. When they notice that the air sailors are making signs at them, they think they want to take them up into the car. They stretch their arms toward them, overjoyed in the hope of accompanying them through the bright upper regions. At this moment the boys have reached the sailing channel, and with arms uplifted they skate down into the water and disappear without a cry for help. The skaters who have tried to reach them in time are standing a couple of seconds later on the edge of the ice, but the current has carried their bodies under the ice, and no helping hand can reach them. End of section 10. Read by Lars Rolander.